Welcome to Turmeric and Tequila with your host, Kristen Olson. Questioning a better way, one gracefully disruptive conversation at a time.
Welcome to Turmeric and Tequila. I'm so excited to be here with you today. We've got the neon, we've got the energy, extra plants. My guests are real, mine are not, but we're here. I'm excited. We're going to do something a little bit different today. We're going to do a podcast and we're going to split it into two parts. We're trying some new things and doing some smaller podcasts so they're a little bit more digestible in two pieces instead of one long one, because in Turmeric and Tequila, we're here to try new things. So we will do that today. So check out this part one and then be ready for the following week for the part two, and we will kick off right now. I want to give a little love to our sponsors, Lux Neuro, offering neurofeedback and counseling where your heart and mind align. For more information about what neurofeedback can do for you, listen to the neurofeedback stories of transformation in the middle of this podcast. Neurofeedback effectively treats everything from insomnia, anxiety, depression, trauma, ADHD, and much more. Optimize your brain. Lux Neuro, check them out at luxneuro.com. We love them, and they've got lots of good stuff going on. Without further ado, I want to introduce Nizhoni Smocks to the TNT mic. Welcome to Turmeric and Tequila.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Yay, yes.
Glad to be here.
Hey, I'm so excited. So if you listen to Turmeric and Tequila, you know I love Connects, Friends of Friends. Nizhoni is a friend of two of my friends. So I'm super pumped. Incredible energy. Shout out to Michael and Claire for connecting us. We are going to talk about Nizhoni's journey, and then she works with Youth Scene, an incredible organization here locally. That's going to be part two, that she's going to share their journey, what they're doing, and all the incredible stuff they have going on. I am going to read her bio. Don't always do that, but hers is amazing. So we're going to make sure we cover all the details because, once I start talking, I don't stop. Nizhoni Smocks, a fierce advocate, facilitator, and innovator, is an Afro-Indigenous woman. She pours back into the underserved and overlooked communities that she is most connected with. She believes that you must go beyond being an ally to accomplice, even though you're not a true stakeholder. Their challenges are your challenges. She understands the incredible impact that organizations and government have on real people's lives. Nizhoni is constantly seeking and learning the skills that help organizations work smarter, not harder. She deeply believes that organizational efficiency influences everything. She's featured on Colorado Voices. She shared her experiences of growing up as an outsider on the Navajo reservation and her journey of self-discovery while never fitting in. Nizhoni is a founding member of Black Pride Colorado and is a current finance director of Youth Scene. Boom.
Yeah.
How is that to hear that back? Do you hear it often?
No, actually, it's really hard to write a bio, because you're like, how can I summarize my life in like paragraph? Which is, very intimidating sometimes, but I think this is one I'm gonna stick with for a while.
Hey, yeah. Well, I have a feeling we'll have, you'll have a bunch to add to it very soon as you are on path to whatever the mission is. But I always like hearing it, especially from mission-driven humans, because I know we don't go back and read our LinkedIn page very often or check in. And then to hear stuff, you're like, man, time's gone by. I'm kind of tired. I feel like I've done some stuff. And then you hear your bio and you're like, oh, all right. Like, we're out here.
Like, I actually did stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, big things. Well, your background is incredible. I'm so excited not only to have you as friend of friends, but here in Denver, Colorado, and you've had some thriving reviews that we'll get into. But give us, I always start off with, give us the background of young Nizhoni. How was it growing up? Tell us things, how they were early on.
Ooh, okay. So I was born in Olathe. Depending on who you ask, say Olathe, Kansas. My family on my mother's side is from Kansas City. Actually, my grandfather's side, and my grandmother is Navajo Dene. Grew up in Chinle, Arizona. So, like I said, born in Kansas, grew up in Kansas City for a little bit, moved to the reservation in Chinle, Canyon de Chelly area. It was actually very informative. I'm actually very thankful for a lot of the experiences that I had, which, a lot of them were not positive, to be very honest, especially being the only family who was not indigenous in town. There's a lot of racism. We can go into that. You can ask me some questions, but I had a really interesting upbringing, but also I had the beauty of growing up outside. away from a lot of media. Like we didn't have cable. If we wanted to watch a movie, it was like VHS back in the day. If you got like a CD or a magazine, it's like growing up on an island. Like literally that's what it was like. And we were not wealthy at all. Like I had like a lot of hand-me-downs. I grew up in my grandmother's house, my brother and I, Tori. And pretty much from kindergarten all the way through junior high, I lived there. And then I moved to Chandler, Arizona, to go to high school at Hamilton when I lived with my mom. That was really interesting. It's like a culture shock, like moving, like I said, off an island to civilization, and just getting to interact with a bunch of people, because I felt like either I was very sheltered in a way from certain things, or I just didn't know a lot, because it's like, I grew up in indigenous culture and like herding sheep and things like that. And, I still have relatives who don't have running water in their homes in 2024. And that's like insane. And some people who don't speak English, they speak Navajo only. And just that whole consumerism, like, it's just like, wow, like, oh, people actually are like in the movies, which is really funny. And then from there, I went to Northern Arizona University, where I majored in pre-med and minor in chemistry. I pledged Gamma Alpha Omega sorority, Omicron chapter, which I later in life became national president of not so long ago. So I've been doing the thing. After college, I had to do some self-discovery, because I was like, oh, wow, like things didn't pan out the way I wanted them to. Or, you have that moment, you're like, oh, you have those several moments in your life where like, oh, like I should have gone that way instead of this way. So, different paths and forks in the road. And I think I made a lot of very informative choices in college. But at the end of it, I found out that, I'm like, hey, my plan that I had, my 5-year plan, it's not going to work out. Let me find something else. So then I went back to grad school. So I got a master's in education, human relations. So how do people learn, grow, and build together? So I think that's what helps me a lot too in my world of, nonprofit work, just connecting with people. And after that, I had some really great, not so great jobs. I worked for Intel, Grand Canyon University, Lyft Bikes and Scooters. Where else have I worked?
Chipotle, McDonald's.
Yeah, Chipotle headquarters when it was in Colorado. So I jumped around a little bit. And then I actually had opportunity in 2021. I had 3 job offers at the same time.
Hey.
And one was, I was at Lyft, and I decided that I was on overnight shift. I did that for almost 2.5 years, and then I was getting tired of it. And, there had a very unfortunate conversation with my boss at the time. And, I was like, okay, well, I need my rest, and my rest is important. And you're telling me that it's not. So I decided to leave. And, I also I accepted a job offer in Michigan for Maine Mobility to run their site in Ann Arbor, Michigan. So autonomous vehicles. It was really wild. Like, a girl who really came from nothing is going to be running like a really cool, autonomous vehicle company site. Like, it was really, really dope, but it didn't pan out because I was feeling uneasy about it. And, moving all the way from Colorado to Michigan, it didn't feel right. So I was like, no, I'm not going to do it. And then you've seen, I met them, met the founder and executive director, Dr. Tara J, through a mutual friend. And we sat down next to each other. We looked at each other and we did not stop talking.
Hey.
So that's a whole other story. And a couple months later, they're like, hey, so you still looking? Like, what's going on? And it came together, and I decided to go to UScene, and I've been there ever since. So this will be coming up 4 years in April. And I started as operations director, moved into finance, learned a lot of different things, got some certificates from Cornell University.
Hey.
So that's like my, the high level version of Nizhoni. Made some amazing friends, lost friends, fell in love, fell out of love. I have an amazing partner now, Sean White, aka DJ Big Styles, who's just, he's my family, because I'm here in Colorado alone, which is intimidating to be in a whole new state away from everybody. But like, it doesn't feel like that And that's just amazing. I have my dog, Whiskey. His adoption day, 5 years was last week. So I had my baby since he was 15 weeks, 7 pounds. Now he's almost 60 pounds and can knock me over.
Hey, holy cow.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the nutshell. And the oldest of 4, single mom, all the things. So yeah.
Okay, I'm also the oldest of 4. I have so many questions because you have paralleled like such juxtapositions in your life and almost kind of you're such an intentional human. I can already tell, but almost like it's just universe is like winding you down this path, and you can parallel them so eloquently because you have had that experience. I feel like since day one. So let's go back to like younger version of you
Yeah.
when you were kind of going from one world to another. This is like sort of pre social media and everything else. Did you guys have any conversation, health or a family or even like community around you around like mental health or, like change management? I mean, that's still something that we don't really talk about, but any sort of conversation, because you're literally going from one world to another, like overnight.
No, actually. That is something I feel like a lot of families could do better about. It's just kind of, somebody just, people struggle through it. They figure their way through it, and there's not a whole lot of conversations that should be happening, like, hey, you're going to a new place. This is how to be safe. It's more like the scare, like, oh, this is going to happen to you if you go do that. Like, no, like, okay, like, but why is it going to happen to me? So it's more, I'll be very honest, fear-based, because there's also, a lot of indigenous belief. My family, we tried to travel the world. Like I did some amazing things on my own too, but it's like it was very like closed culture, stay safe, be safe type of thing. Small community minded, if that makes sense. But I do feel like now as we go back, because I am a strong advocate for therapy. I've been in therapy since I moved to Denver. It has actually changed my life, because it's just like, if I would have known that, my mother or my grandmother was going through these things, then I would have thought differently or approached things differently versus, they're just, upset all the time or whatever was going on with them. So I do feel like we need to do better. It's just like, hey, like, as you grow up, things will happen and change, and this is how you can handle it. And it's okay to be scared or to have second thoughts or, to not do things. But it's just, there's a lot of conversations that could have been had.
Absolutely. What always fascinates me is, as diverse as our world is, and that's why I'm such an advocate for diversity, because you can see people doing different things, living different ways, and exposure is so critical in my opinion. What was it that made you, because disrupting like generational narrative is extraordinarily hard. And I think any culture or human can relate to that in some capacity, regardless of where they come from, because we are so conditioned to be like what we came from and to what, the environment we're digesting around us. What made you, do you think, as a young human, even being open-minded to something different than what your parents or the ones around you were doing, taking, a step in a direction or seeking out therapy or anything in that capacity?
Well, I knew at a very young age, I didn't know what I wanted, but I knew what I didn't want.
Yeah.
To be very honest, like, I love now that there's this whole narrative, or there's even some kids who grew up with the fact that you can do anything, you can believe in anything, you can do. I didn't have that. So it's really important to, one, I realized like, I don't want to grow up that way. I don't want to live that life. I don't want to be angry all the time. But also like me moving away from everybody was just eye-opening, because you think, oh, I go to a new city and I'm gonna start all over and be this whole new person. I'm like, no, you're still the same person. You're just in this different place. You take your problems with you, you take your attitude with you, like nothing really changes. But yeah, being away from everything I knew, like my whole life was in Arizona, up until 2018, is that I knew something was wrong. I just like, there's something in my spirit was just not right. And I don't want to go too much into the trauma of my family, and the survivorship. And, like my grandmother we don't know what her actual birth date is. She was born in a cornfield, like,
Wow.
so we don't know. And she was given, an English name because she had to go to boarding school by, the BIA and things like that. So it's just, I saw what was happening and I knew that was not for me. And I started to seek out different experiences, whether that was like me through school, because I also, I was a kid, I got made fun of a lot because of my skin color and like my hair texture, things like that. And I decided, oh, okay, I'm gonna be the smartest person. So then I was like,
Mhm.
okay. And then I realized that education was gonna be my ticket out, and off the reservation. So I really pushed myself into that. And I wanted to be a doctor and do all these amazing things. But again, going back to it's like I just decided, like, I saw what I didn't want. Then I started meeting people along my journey who were like, hey, do this, try this, read this. And I was an avid reader. Just, as a kid, you're just like, you have these phases, like,
Yeah.
just, I was always the one going for, like, I don't know, Egyptian, theology or something. And
Okay.
just finding different things because most kids were like into vampires and Batman. Like, no, that wasn't like I even like we had this really crazy like encyclopedia of the Bible when I was a kid. And I read it one summer. I was like, yeah, I'm okay. Like
Okay.
I learned a lot. But also, yeah, it takes a lot to just decide, like, yeah, I want something different. And just seeing, and I'll say this too, like when I started therapy, I told my therapist this. I didn't realize people could be happy.
Mhm.
Because I didn't see that really mirrored in my life. Like, yeah, there's moments of joy, like somebody's birthday or the holidays, but I didn't know people could be happy until I removed myself, which is, and I've been called selfish.
Mhm.
I've been called many things because I am choosing peace over, on peaceful interaction. But yeah, I just decided, like, yeah, this doesn't feel good, doesn't look right. I also like saw what other people were going through. I'm like, oh, they have an amazing family and they actually like each other. Like, what are they doing? So
Yeah.
things like
Oh,
that.
man. That's wild. Yeah, I relate to so many things. And even now at 43, it's funny because some of those like the ability to step away from what you know, and I think families always, not always, a lot of times want you to stay in it, or they don't know a different way, so they're wondering why you're walking outside of it, or you're taking your sorrow alongside it, whatever. It's just really interesting. It's kind of something that I think continues to come up in our world, maybe in different forms of like just knowing boundaries and knowing like where your heart's pulling you. And I'm always fascinated when our young people have this intrinsic motivation or spiritual connection or sense of self or something that pushes them in a direction to follow, to do better versus go in the other direction of drinking or just, omitting or submitting or, because when you're young, I don't know if it's, I don't know if there's science around this or what, but I'm always fascinated by like what motivates an individual to go one way or another. And I know it's a very layered conversation, but it's fascinating to me. And I'm also the oldest. So like, I don't know. I think the oldest always kind of has this sense of responsibility and like, you're kind of the leader of the troop. So I don't, there's some like sense of just taking care of yourself is almost put to the side. You're doing it for the team. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
um, I think in my case, a lot of it was just survival.
Mhm.
Um, because I do remember, I'll say this, there was a conversation with my brother, like when I left the college, and he said to me, like, you're leaving us, and it really, it's still like when I think about it, I'm like, yeah, I'm like, I have to, like,
Mhm.
you're supposed to go and forge and discover new things. And, like, and we don't keep in touch as much as we used to, that was years and years ago. But, you have to, I just always knew, like, there was just something inside me. Like, I was that kid who would sit outside and like stare at the stars and
Mhm.
like wish I was in a rocket or, dig up, play archaeologist in the backyard. Like, I always, anywhere but here. Like,
Yeah.
that's literally how I had to, um I guess that's the mentality I had growing up because of, everything that was happening and the chaos and confusion. And it's still, I feel like that sometimes too, but I'm also like, okay, like, no, because I have a choice now. My decisions led me here, handle business. But when I was a kid, I didn't have, a say in a lot of things that happened. So
Mhm. Yeah. It's amazing. Do you consider yourself, we talked a little bit about this prior, but religious, spiritual, like tell me about like the internal, like you kind of follow your heart because you seem very connected to yourself. Even as like a young human, when you don't have the language around it, there's some sort of like pull from within and then a drive to move in a certain direction, regardless of what surroundings are influencing you to do.
Yeah, I would say that I am spiritual. I had a lot of bad experiences with religion, especially at a young age. I think we shared the story when we talked before, like how, for some reason, we're at the Church of Latter-day Saints, and the Sunday school teacher separated me and my cousins and told the rest of the class we're going to hell because we're black. So to me, like any religion that upholds that type of belief or any God that allows that to be okay is not okay with me. So I started to really scrutinize religion. I think that religion is an amazing thing and it gives people hope, in the world. And I'm never going to, talk down about other people's beliefs because, you got to do what you got to do to get through the day. As long as you're not hurting anybody and you're not hurting yourself, like, why not? And it doesn't, stretch the line of science and fiction, because there's some things where it's like, oh, you're going to hurt yourself if you continue this path.
Yeah.
So religion is not for me. Spiritual, because I had to like make my own fit, because like like I said, I read the Bible as a kid. I've experienced different things. Like I have my own rituals, like I burn incense and I meditate and I do yoga. I use some of my indigenous practices like praying at sunrise and things like that. Or if we have like a ceremony, I try to attend when I can. But yeah, I feel like you have to find something bigger than yourself to be a part of. I don't necessarily like believe like a god or somebody sitting up on the cloud somewhere. I believe in like the energy of the universe
Yeah.
and how there's karma and how I read something and I'm probably misquoting it, but it's like, your energy affects everyone within 30 feet of you. And I
Mhm.
firmly believe that
Yeah.
because if somebody walks in the room, and everybody feels it. And it's just
Yeah.
like, so yeah, I try my best to just, every day cover myself in light
Mhm.
and love and spread that to people. Even when I'm not having a good day, I always try to find a moment or some kind word or something or just hold space for somebody. Like, my world may be on fire, but like, you clearly need to share and I will,
Mhm.
carry that for you if I can.
Amen. Everybody write that down because that is what we need in our world more than ever, especially with election and all that energy coming up. And
Mhm.
one thing I do like to talk about often is because I'm like you. I think I told you we were athletes growing up, so we didn't go to church on Sunday. We had sports. I had 3 younger brothers, so I was swooped in everything. Parents athletic, and I liked church because it was like people getting together and music and community, and like that's just something I like. But then I think someone gave me a Bible, one of my friends, when I was like 7 or 8, and I read like 5 paragraphs, and I was like, this just isn't my thing. Like as a young person, nothing against it. And like you, I'm here for anything that motivates you to be a better person in your version, especially if you've never experienced anything else. Like it's probably gonna be a path you go down, and like that's fine. But I knew very early on it wasn't something that spoke to me. But I've always been feelings, energy, empath. I'm with you. And when people get uncomfortable with like the quote unquote woo, it's one thing. But if you get into like physics, it's quite simple. Energy can't be created or destroyed. Everything, if I'm coming on with a bad attitude, they're like, it's going somewhere. If you rub your hands together, you feel the heat. That's energy that you're like putting out to the universe. So it's really like a scientific conversation. So if we can level up our consciousness of like what we are bringing to the table. I love that you just said that. I think that is a massive step just in itself of just putting some positive energy into this world when we need it the most. And it's free. It's there. It's good for you. It's good for everyone around you. And it doesn't have to be a religious or a woo or a science conversation. It can label it any which way you want. These are like really easy practices you can do just to lighten the air or like hold space or just a little something. And I think it's incredible what you can get in return.
Absolutely, I agree. It's just whatever you need to do to be a good person. Like it
Yeah.
doesn't cost you anything. Like it
Yeah.
does you don't have to go someplace. You just find a quiet moment and, figure out what's going on with you and your body and how you can, apologize to somebody. Something as simple as that can change the world or even ask somebody how their day's going. Like I always do this, like I go through a drive-through or I'm getting help somewhere and how are you? And it's just like they pause because like shock. And they're like, oh, I'm okay. Or, sometimes they go into detail and they say they're not okay and this happened. And, I was like, well, there's no one behind me. Like, let's
talk about it.
Yeah, I'm that person.
Yeah, I know. I love that though, because you never know. It could be someone's sister's aunt that happens to live next to you in Colorado. Denver's small, Mark. Remember, the world is small. But I was just at an expo I was telling you today, and I ran into someone I hadn't seen in 5 years, and we couldn't catch up. And then we were like crossing paths at this expo, like the most random thing ever. So you never know. And I actually think, like, I don't know if you believe in guardian angels or, things kind of line up to happen. I do think you like attract stuff in or you repel stuff out. And a lot of things happen right on time. Actually, let's go there because you're such an intentional human. You said you had the 5-year plan as a young person, and I always love that because I was not that kid. I was just playing sports. But when kids always have the plan, I'm like, okay, I'm like, breathe through that because it's whatever you plan is not going to go that way. Tell me how you manage, being intentional, having this plan, and then having to kind of like let life happen and let go a little bit.
Ooh, yeah, the plan was. Because I used to be, I learned that through therapy that I developed control issues because I had no control as a kid. So that was like being very meticulous. I'm also a Scorpio, so take what you want from that. October Scorpio. And
wait, what's your birthday date?
October 27th.
That's right, because I'm the 21st. We talked about this. Yeah, I'm a Libra cusper, but yeah, keep going.
And I just decided, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna graduate from college. I'm gonna go to med school. I'm gonna have my house by this time. I'm gonna be married by this time. Like I'm having kids by this time. I was like, okay, like, and at the time it made sense because I didn't have any guidance or anybody to like, I'll say, oh, it's okay if you don't do that. You don't need to do this. Like I was really taught to be an overachiever. And like now I'm like, okay, like, yeah, I like rushed through everything. Like I was that person who literally went through college and then had like a real job immediately after my friends were like, oh yeah, I'm hanging out at my parents' house. And I don't know, I might go to that job interview. Who knows? Right. So I was like that person. Right. And as I got older, I realized that I was, making money. I had, I've been employed by like some of the best, and biggest companies, and at the time, and I realized that, hey, this is not fulfilling, like I'm literally spending 8+ hours a day, not pouring into myself. I think about it like, hey, if I actually would have worked on me instead of, making John millions of dollars, then maybe I would be a doctor now, or I would, have a house, or maybe I would have hit every continent like on my list as a kid, to travel. And I started to think about it. I'm like, what's really important? And to be very honest, like this last like 2 years, almost 3 years, like have been very transformative for me because now it's like my focus on the world has shifted dramatically. Like, yeah, there's the pandemic, of course, because I think we all need to go to therapy because I feel a lot of people I talk to is like, yeah, like we all thought we were gonna die, which is really dark, but then we just like, we're not gonna talk about that. It's like, oh, like we're supposed to go back to normal without having that conversation, right? And the pandemic was a part of my process, but and I was thankful that I did not stop working the whole time. Like I literally just masked up, went to work every day, never missed a shift. Like I just, I think I even had COVID before it was trendy. Nobody knew what it was.
Yeah.
Like I've never had trouble breathing before. And that was like September, like right after I visited New York, right before, like March was 2020 when it shut down. And yeah, I was like, I've never felt like this before. And I was sick for like 2 weeks and, I had to go to work and everything. And I started to think about the world very differently because I'm like, like, so what if this was it? Like, am I gonna, like, and I started to realize I had a lot of regrets, like I never did that or this. And then I also realized too that I was doing a lot of comparison. People my age should be doing this.
Yeah.
People from where I'm from are doing this. Social media says I should be this, like you need to, be this tall and be this thin and look like this and your hair down in here. Like, I realized that I fell victim to a lot of the things that I was protected from as a kid, not having access to media that freely. And also realized too, like, okay, like what, at the end of the day, it was kind of a very morbid activity, but like have you heard of like write your own obituary?
I have heard that. I can't remember. I was at some conference or something. Oh no, it was a woman that was speaking on death and like pre-planning, and she had as an exercise. I can't remember if we wrote it or not, but anyways, yeah,
Yeah.
it's an intense space to visit for sure.
Yeah. And then I was like, like, I'm like, I don't feel, because you write down your accomplishments and and you're like, oh, well, is that it?
Mhm.
Like all of it was, I realized all of it was work.
Mhm.
I did this, pretty much my resume.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's really sad. And I decided to start pursuing opportunities where I could, live a life that I wanted. So like in 2015, my friend and I, Amanda, we spent almost a month in Europe, and we just traveled around and went to Paris, Barcelona, Amsterdam, Rome, London. We just did the whole thing, and then spent some time in New York on our way back. And that was like, yeah, this is the life I want. I want to experience everything that I used to read about as a kid. And I find it very fascinating to, because I even know, like, I know I don't know everything and I may never know everything. And that's exciting and terrifying at the same time, because honestly, if I didn't have to worry about money, I'd be traveling and helping people and, just doing all these things, which, is coming,
Hey,
universe,
let's go.
I'm manifesting that.
Let's go.
But yeah, I just want to show the world and then show the younger person that I used to be that, yeah, things are tough now, but just wait till you get older and you're going to just have so much joy and, so many experiences. And, if and when I have children, which, who knows, they'll be able to just go out and just have so much joy and love and just spread that throughout the world. So.
I love it. I thank you so much for sharing that, because I want our young people to kind of, we kicked off the show, let go enough to just have stuff happen. You got to show up. You got to be intentional. You got to do the work. You got to believe in something bigger, whatever it is. And you got to let just like some stuff happen. And I say this casually because I'm not good at it. Like you, like I'm like, no, but I'm going to train harder. I'm going to read more. We're going to do more. And it's like, no, you need to just freaking sit still and like breathe for a second and like just let some stuff come in. And that's really hard. And there's so much pressure on our young people nowadays, growing up with social media at 0 years old and all these expectations. And there's millionaires off YouTube at 17 and blah, blah, blah. It's a really wild world with extraordinary pressures. And the reality is we don't control a lot. Like there's so many variables in things. We don't control where we're born, who we grow up with, our surroundings. Then as you get older, crazy stuff can happen, or extraordinary things. You can win the lottery and that can be amazing and tragic all in itself. Like there's all these complex things you just don't know how to handle. And we're so equipped that you almost have to get good at just being in a space of like staying ready, and you're good and you're in peace and you can kind of go with whatever is coming at you. Do you feel like you're naturally, like you're in a space now, having had the experience and done the work to kind of be more in flow organically?
No.
Okay.
Actually, I relapsed. I'll be really honest. I had to learn how to rest. I'm still learning. Like I literally had to, for example, coming to youth scene, like I started at a retreat. That was my first day. Like come to the retreat
Okay.
and meet everybody. And I was like, so what are we doing? They're like, nothing. I'm like, what do you mean nothing? Like, like what is that? And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, like because when you're at work, you're so used to just being
Yep.
productive and just, cranking out whatever. And so I was like, okay, well, that was a change. Because
Yeah.
even in, growing up, like if you were, you were only laying down if you were sleeping or you're sick.
Yeah.
That's how I grew up. And, you really didn't have a whole lot of leisure. You had to be doing something. There's always something to do. Or even if somebody's, they, oh, we don't need your help. We're moving the couch. I still would get up and help, right? So I'm still learning how to rest. And I say I relapsed because I literally like worked myself into the ground in July, and I ended up getting COVID. And I was just like, I literally had to like stop. Like I was like, okay, like I literally, my body told, like my body was like, no, you can't even sit up, you can't even keep your eyes open. You can't. You just have to, stop. But also one thing I have learned outside of like resting is I love do not disturb on my phone.
Okay.
My friends and my family hate it, but I'm just like, I can't. Like I just,
Yeah. That's
I can't.
powerful.
I want quiet. Whether or not my dog's in here running around barking and everything, but I just need peace. I just need somebody to not need me for
Yeah.
however long my phone is on. I don't get to sleep in as much as I used to. That was one way I realized back in the day that I would cope with, chaos, is like I would just like I'd find a day, like usually a Saturday, and I just sleep all day, which
Okay.
is not healthy.
Yeah.
But that was the way I coped with the world. Like I absorbed everything through the week, and then I just kind of, that was a way of releasing it. So I'm still learning and working. But what has helped me, honestly, is keeping routines. Like I have little things I do every morning, or make sure like I love fashion. I love fashion.
Yay.
So like I find things that I love and that are easy. I onesies, bodysuits, like I'm there. Like throw it on me, right? Comfortable shoes. I used to love heels. Can't do it no more. Like I have cute ones, but like no, give me a sneaker. I'll be good. But yeah, just finding like things that make you happy, like a great cup of coffee, a book, TV show, whatever it is. Like I just try to find that one thing, like, okay, I'll reward myself with this.
Yeah.
Or here's a book on this. I actually found a really cool book I need to read. It's called It's Not Your Money by Tasha Silver. And
Okay.
basically it talks about like the spiritual connection between like wealth and yourself. So like people who have like a lack mindset, because they don't have the connection with the universe.
Yeah.
So like when you're manifesting, like those are things that really help. But yeah, I'm still learning and working. I actually had a really wonderful mentor that I met years ago, Renee Young. I think I met her in 2010, and she changed my life. Like she taught me like not only what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a Black woman, how to love on yourself. I used to have a really hard time hugging people.
Oh, okay.
Believe it or not. And I still struggle with receiving. Like I'm that person, like, oh, I'm gonna give you this gift. I'm like, oh, I didn't bring you anything, right? So still working on that. But like
Okay.
she's taught me, through the years that we had together, it's really important to be this person, because honestly, before I left Arizona, I was a very angry and hurt person, and I blamed everybody for everything that happened to me. And I channeled that hate, and I'll say hate. Yeah, I'll say that hate and anger into success and propelled me forward. But then I realized, like, okay, like I'm by myself. I can't blame anybody for anything. Then I started to look at, from other people's perspectives, like, well, of course they did what they did because that's what the best choice they had at the time, or they didn't know better, or yada, yada, yada. So through that mentorship and therapy, like this is who you see today. And I can also contribute a lot of like my work ethic and my willingness to help others, like through my sorority work with Gamma Alpha Omega. Like at 18 I could run a business based off of all the things I had to do to be a part of it. And we weren't in traditional sorority. Like we were at academic and community service, so like you had to get your service hours, you had to have good grades, which is very rare, I feel like, sometimes, like in college experiences.
Oh,
And it
yeah.
was a multicultural sorority, Latina
Okay.
founded. And through that, I discovered a whole new world. Like, oh, I can use my type A to, get all the chapters in, the Southwest region and do XYZ. I learned so much. I met some amazing people and got to travel. That was one thing too, like growing up, like I didn't fly. My first flight was in 2008.
Okay.
I was still in college, I believe.
Okay.
And I was like, but my sorority, I got to go to California, go to, Chicago, Atlanta, like just all these random places that I never would have had a chance to go or reason to. And that like opened up my world like a lot more. So, but to answer your original question, like I'm still a work in progress. You just have to, I hate the word discipline, but you have to make, you have to be intentional.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know if I want to have a good day, I need to eat dinner.
Yeah.
This is for the next day. I need to have breakfast. I need to get between 8 and 7 hours of sleep. I need, my sheets need to feel like this, like things like that. Like,
particulars. Okay.
Yeah, I've become the princess and the pea in some ways, but like I just know like these are things that will set me up for success. That way I can go out and be the best person I can for my friends, family, my coworkers, the community we serve. So you just have to learn what makes you happy at the end of the day.
Absolutely. I could not agree with you more. It's the little things, like we're always kind of seeking, society rewards these grandiose accomplishments or gestures and whatnot, but really like the happiness is the cup of coffee, the nice ass sheets that you need or whatever gets your engine going, these little, and as you get older, you get like weird particulars, which I've always loved these little idiosyncrasies that people do that are like how someone like crumbles napkins and puts it under their leg at dinner, like the weirdest stuff that people just do. And it's like, I actually think it's intel on like something they're supposed to do down the way. Cause like humans are just the way they are, like outside of conditioning. Do you think you're good at, two-part question here. Number one, we kind of covered this, but like, do you think you're good about giving yourself grace in general? Cause this is something I also like, a very simple takeaway I want for our young people, all people to hear, but especially our young humans, like you got to hold space and grace for yourself.
I am getting better. I actually just released perfectionism.
Okay.
So instead of perfection, I'm going for excellence. Which actually has been a huge weight off my shoulder because like I was just taught that everything had to be exact and perfect and whatever. And then I realized I'm like, okay, unless you're saving a life, like it doesn't have to be, because then you're like stressed, like, oh, I forgot a period, and then your day's ruined, things like that. So that used to be me.
Okay.
I do, I strive for excellence. I think it's really important to just find like what works for you, but also like why you're doing something. If you're doing it to please other people, then it's like, if you don't have any sense of ownership in anything that you're doing, then what's the point?
Exactly.
So.
Absolutely. Yes, amen. And I asked that because this will be a perfect transition into youth scene. I think we're in a world of social media, influencers, leaders, coaches, mentors. Like I think so much of your world universe was providing these things for you at the right place at the right time while you were being intentional. Certain people coming through in your life. I don't know if it was intentional or not to cross paths with your mentor, but different things show up. You still have to be intentional, but so much of it is when you get to a conscious space as a quote unquote adult is leading by example. And I don't believe being an athlete forever. I could never buy into a coach that didn't at one point play the sport or have some experience. Like you can always tell when there's some sort of like falseness there, and that carries over into the business world, personal relationships, whatnot. So I love when our leaders that are community leaders, family leaders, whatever, have done the work themselves, and intentionally or not, they really are leading by example and are influencers that can speak from genuine, authentic experience space and say, I can do this because I can teach this because I've done it. I've walked through it. Here's my story. And I can relate to you in some capacity. Here's what it is. And I think that's what reaches humans in general the most, especially our young people. So it's been pretty remarkable that you've, come through these adversities and had this very unique path. And now you're in a position to lead young people and all people in a space that are underserved, that do feel unseen. And you can speak from such experience in such an authentic way.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So let's pause there. I don't like this is why we never split up shows, because it's like, okay, we got the energy and flow and then we're pausing. But we're gonna jump to part 2. So I'm going to give a shout out to our sponsors And we'll jump into, we'll get into youth scene with Nizhoni right now. A quick thank you to our sponsors. Thank you, Lux Neuro, Neurofeedback and Counseling. Lux Neuro wants to meet you. If you're ready to transform your life, visit them at luxneuro.com and schedule a consultation. A special thank you to Declan James Watches, local and veteran owned, with 10% going back to the Navy SEAL Foundation. Go check them out and come at us with part 2. Cheers.
Yay.
Thank you for joining Turmeric and Tequila with your host, Kristen Olson. Tune in next time, and don't forget to subscribe on Apple, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen.